January 1944, the Normandy coast before dawn. A cold Atlantic wind drives salt spray against sheer limestone cliffs. Waves hammer the base of Pointe du Hoc with a dull, relentless thunder. Above, the cliff edge disappears into darkness, crowned with concrete and steel. German sentries stamp their boots against the chill, fingers numb around rifle stocks, listening to the sea more than watching it. The sound is familiar, eternal. Nothing in that sound suggests what is about to come. Pointe du Hoc mattered because it was believed to be unassailable. Rising nearly 100 feet above the channel, it guarded the approaches between Omaha and Utah beaches. German planners had transformed it into a fortress, casements of reinforced concrete, trenches, barbed wire, minefields, and 6 heavy guns intended to rake the invasion beaches with fire. In German doctrine, cliffs were natural fortresses. Assault from the sea under fire was considered suicidal. Maps, war games, and engineering manuals all agreed. No infantry force could climb such cliffs in combat conditions and survive. The men of the 352nd Infantry Division expected an attack like all the others: artillery preparation, infantry penned at the shoreline, chaos contained by machine guns and gravity. They trusted concrete, elevation, and doctrine. They trusted that fear itself would break the enemy long before any soldier reached the top. The cliffs were not merely rock, they were certainty. What they did not expect were the U.S. Army Rangers. As the first light crept into the sky on June 6, 1944, small assault craft bucked violently in the surf below Pointe du Hoc. Rain fell in sheets, smoke and naval gunfire blurred the horizon. From above, German defenders saw movement where there should have been none, dark shapes in the water, closing rather than retreating. Rockets arced upward, trailing ropes that slapped wetly against the cliff face. Grapnels caught. Some failed, others held. Under direct fire, the Rangers began to climb. Historical records are precise about the conditions. Strong currents had pushed the assault force off course. Several landing craft were damaged. Many Rangers arrived late and scattered. German machine guns fired downward at point-blank angles. Grenades were rolled over the cliff edge, exploding among climbers clinging to ropes. Yet men continued upward, hand over hand, using ropes stiffened with rain and salt, boots scraping limestone, weapons slung across their backs. German after-action reports describe disbelief. One officer noted that the enemy appeared on the cliff as if from the rock itself. Another recorded that fire which should have annihilated attackers instead only slowed them. The expected outcome, bodies falling back into the sea, did not occur. Instead, helmets appeared at the lip of the cliff. Rifles followed, then men. The emotional contrast was stark. German soldiers have been taught that American troops relied on machines, not courage, on firepower, not endurance. Here, under conditions that defied tactical logic, Americans were advancing not with tanks or massed formations, but with ropes, knives, and sheer determination. The cliff, symbol of German confidence, became a ladder for the enemy. One sound repeated through the chaos: the crack of naval gunfire from offshore. Even as the Rangers climbed, American destroyers moved dangerously close to the coast, firing directly at German positions to suppress defenses. That sound, deep, controlled, unrelenting, became a symbol of something larger. It was not merely fire support. It was assurance. It said the climbers were not alone. It said resources were vast enough to risk ships to save men on ropes. Once atop Pointe du Hoc, the Rangers did not find what German planners expected them to find. The heavy guns were gone, moved inland days earlier to avoid bombardment. Yet the mission did not collapse. Small patrols pushed forward through hedgerows under fire and found the guns hidden along a farm lane. Thermite grenades destroyed them. The threat to the beaches ended not with a grand explosion, but with quiet efficiency. German reaction to this discovery was confusion layered atop shock. Even when defensive plans worked on paper, the enemy adopted. American initiative did not pause for missing objectives or imperfect landings. It adjusted, pressed forward, and completed the task anyway. For defenders trained in rigid command structures, this flexibility was deeply unsettling. Over the next 2 days, the Rangers held Pointe du Hoc against repeated counterattacks. Cut off, low on ammunition, suffering heavy casualties, they refused to withdraw. German attempts to retake the position failed. The cliffs that once represented permanence now symbolized vulnerability. Elevation no longer guaranteed safety. Doctrine no longer guaranteed victory. Transformation followed realization. German soldiers who survived later wrote that Pointe du Hoc altered their understanding of the war. One veteran recalled that until Normandy, he believed Germany could still impose its will through engineering and discipline. Afterward, he understood that the Allies possessed something more dangerous, the ability to combine industrial power with individual initiative. Concrete could be smashed, cliffs could be climbed, certainty could be overturned. The recurring sound of naval guns remained in memory long after the battle. It echoed not only across the coast, but through the German perception of American power. It represented abundance of ships, of ammunition, of trained men willing to climb into fire because they trusted the system behind them. That sound was democracy rendered audible, many parts working together, none indispensable, all replaceable, all committed to the same forward motion. In the months that followed, as German forces retreated across France, Pointe du Hoc became a reference point. It was cited in briefings and whispered in dugouts. If Americans could climb that cliff, defenders wondered, what position was truly secure? The psychological effect extended far beyond Normandy. Fear was no longer rooted in numbers alone, but in the idea that no obstacle was final. Today, the cliffs remain scarred by craters. Rusted metal lies half buried in grass. The sea still pounds the rocks below with the same indifferent rhythm. But the silence is different. It carries the weight of a lesson learned under fire, that freedom, when backed by organization, resources, and belief, can ascend where logic says it should fall. Pointe du Hoc stands not just as a battlefield, but as a testament. It reminds us that wars are not decided solely by fortifications or plans, but by the moment when expectation collapses under reality. On that morning, as ropes tightened and men climbed into gunfire, the sound of American guns offshore marked the turning of more than a tide. It marked the beginning of an understanding that abundance, when married to resolve, can climb even the steepest walls history erects against it.